the chicken soup had gone cold on the stove. I hadn't realized it had stopped simmering until the smell changed, no longer warm or savory, just flat. Still, I left it. No one was eating anyway. Molly sat across from me, absent-mindedly pushing her spoon through a bowl she hadn't touched. Her eyes flicked up at me for a moment, then back to her phone. Calvin was quieter. He didn't meet my gaze. Just gently moved my recipe book to the far edge of the table, like it was in the way. "Mom, we've been thinking," Calvin began, and then stopped. He didn't finish the sentence. Instead, he slid a piece of paper across the table. A job listing from the grocery store. Night shift. $9.50 an hour. No one raised their voice. No one said anything cruel. But the message was loud and clear. I was no longer needed. Or wanted. They called it concern. They framed it as help. But I heard what they didn't say. I smiled then, not because I agreed, but because the silence had already confirmed everything. That was the moment I felt it. A faint signal. Not anger, not grief, just a new kind of coldness, deep in the ribs. The kind that told me I wasn't seen anymore. Only tolerated. Useful, until I became too visible. Too inconvenient. It never felt like sacrifice. Not to me. It felt like the most natural thing in the world. When Harold died, 3 years ago come March, I didn't think twice about moving in with Calvin and Molly. I was the one who suggested it. They just had the baby, their roof was leaking, and Calvin's job was still touch and go after the last round of layoffs. Molly was trying to get her private practice off the ground, and I knew what early motherhood looked like. I knew the weight of it. I'd carried it once myself. So I packed up the house on Halsted Street, the one Harold and I had shared for nearly 40 years, and I came here. We sold it. Half the proceeds went into the down payment for this place. I covered the closing costs, too. And Harold's life insurance, well, we agreed it made sense to put it toward the mortgage, reduce the monthly payments. "It's all family," Calvin had said back then, standing in the yard with a clipboard in hand, "it's all going in the same direction." So I poured in everything I had. I took the smallest bedroom. Turned it into something soft. Simple. I never complained about the noise, the clutter, the baby crying through the night. I cooked every meal. Scrubbed the baseboards. Kept extra cash in the laundry room in case Molly's card declined again, like it did those first few months. I helped raise their daughter while Molly rebuilt her hours and Calvin commuted to a job that didn't love him back. And I never once asked to be thanked. Because I didn't think I was owed gratitude. I thought I was doing what any decent mother would. What Harold would have done in my place. He used to say, "Family isn't duty, it's an anchor. A chosen one." I believed that. I built my life on it. And I learned to keep my mouth shut. Especially when Molly rolled her eyes at my advice. Especially when Calvin stopped asking how my day was. I made myself small when they had friends over. I kept out of photographs. Always offered to take them, never to be in them. I didn't want to intrude. I didn't want to be one of those mothers, demanding, overbearing, refusing to let go. What I didn't realize, until that night in the kitchen, was that I hadn't been holding on at all. I'd already been released. Quietly. Slowly. Like steam slipping out of a pot that no one notices until it's gone. That moment, with the soup and the job listing, was just the first time they stopped pretending I was anything more than a live-in relic. A fixed cost they were trying to reduce. They didn't argue. They didn't fight. They were professional about it. "We're just worried about your independence," Molly said later that evening, as if the job was a gift and not an insult. "You deserve your own life," she added, wiping her hands on a dish towel that I had bleached the day before. I said nothing. Because what could I say? They'd repackaged rejection as empowerment. I was 64 years old, standing in a kitchen I helped buy, next to a stove I scrubbed daily, being told that a night shift job at a grocery store was an opportunity for growth. That night, I lay awake for hours in the guest room. That's what they called it now. Guest room. Not mom's room. Not grandma's room. Just a space with neutral walls and good lighting that could one day be turned into an office, or a nursery if they had another baby. The laughter through the walls was muffled. Low and private. Probably a show. Maybe a phone call. But in that moment, it felt like something else entirely. It felt like relief. Their relief. Because no one ever asked me to stay. I had offered, and they had accepted, just long enough to get back on their feet. But now they were standing, and I was still there. Still cooking. Still budgeting. Still cleaning up after grown adults who had once needed me, and now didn't. And somehow, that made me inconvenient. That was the word I couldn't shake. Not burdensome. Not unwanted. Just inconvenient. Until I remembered the folder. Harold's folder. The one he kept tucked in the back of his closet, behind the old overcoats and the boots he never wore after the surgery on his knee. I had found it after he passed, when I was going through his things in that strange, heavy fog of widowhood. It was leather, cracked at the edges, tied with an old shoelace. Inside, a single key and a folded note. In his handwriting, "If things go wrong, go here. Tell no one." I didn't know what he meant at the time. I thought it was for emergencies. Maybe a backup plan, in case we lost everything. But Harold had never been dramatic. He didn't believe in sudden disaster. He believed in slow betrayal. He had watched our children grow up. Had watched the way they treated me, even when I didn't see it. Had seen the way they nodded and smiled while gently erasing the edges of my authority. He'd seen it all before I did. And he'd made a plan. He hadn't left me with nothing. He'd left me a question. If things go wrong, go where? That night, I rose before dawn. I made tea, packed a single suitcase, and sat at the edge of my bed staring at that key. It didn't look like much. Brass, a little tarnished. No label. But it was a door. A door to something he'd meant me to have when the time came. And I understood, in that dim light, that the time had come. I didn't cry. I didn't write a note. I didn't even open the refrigerator to take any of the meals I had prepared for the week. I just zipped my coat, slipped the key into my pocket, and stepped out into the morning chill. The world looked the same. But I was walking away from the version of me they thought would never leave. I hadn't driven Harold's car in months. It still smelled faintly of his aftershave, the one he wore every Sunday without fail. The key was exactly where he'd left it, in the drawer by the front door, next to his old gloves and pocketknife. I packed a single suitcase and left before sunrise, not because I had to be somewhere fast, but because I didn't want to say goodbye. The bank he used wasn't local. It was out near Ellison, 2 counties over. I remembered it only because Harold once helped his cousin settle an estate there. They still believe in privacy, he said. They don't lose track of people. When I walked in, the place didn't look like much. Wood paneling, a single ficus in the corner, a reception desk with a young man who looked like he belonged behind a college library counter. I handed him the key. He asked my name and cross-referenced it with a file. He left, then came back with a woman in a navy blue suit. She introduced herself as the vault manager and said, "Right this way, Mrs. Wallace. We've been instructed to give you full access when you arrived." The room was small, just a table, a chair, and a metal box already waiting for me. No questions. No papers to sign. Just quiet and time. Inside the box was a sealed envelope with my name on it in Harold's handwriting. Underneath it, several property deeds, 2 folders of investment documents, and a thick packet of savings bonds. A file marked Merrick Mineral Trust looked decades old. At the bottom, banded stacks of bills, small denominations, but the amount was enough to make me sit back for a moment. I didn't touch the cash. I didn't touch anything at first. I opened the envelope. Michelle. If you're reading this, then you know why I never showed you this box. I didn't want to scare you. I just wanted you to know, if things ever turned, you'd have a way forward. On your terms. Quietly. Use what's here however you want. It's yours. All of it. You'll find Gwen Shaw's contact in the black folder. She's a lawyer I trust. She'll help you put everything in your name, no questions asked. Tell no one. Not yet. Love. H. I read the letter twice. My hands didn't shake, but my chest felt strange, like something was unwinding. Not grief. I'd done my grieving already. This was something else. A kind of realization I wasn't ready to name yet. Harold hadn't just left me money. He'd left me an exit. A quiet, complete exit that didn't require anyone's approval. That was the part that stayed with me the most. He hadn't assumed I'd need rescuing. He hadn't imagined some tragedy would drive me to this. He'd simply known the truth: people change. Children grow. And sometimes, the life you gave everything to starts treating you like a problem to be solved. I organized the documents slowly, neatly. I didn't rush. I looked through the deeds, 2 properties I didn't even know existed. One in Nevada, one in northern New York. There were dates going back more than 10 years. He'd bought them gradually, quietly, while we were still talking about retirement one day. A cabin near a lake. Land near a mining site that seemed worthless, until the stocks bundled next to it suggested otherwise. Harold had never bragged about being clever. But he was. He saw patterns. And more importantly, he trusted me to make sense of them when the time came. I left the bank with a folder full of financial information, the key in my pocket, and a name, Gwen Shaw, written clearly on a business card. I didn't go home. I didn't even call. I drove to a modest roadside motel. Paid cash. Slept through the night for the first time in weeks. The next morning, I sat on the edge of the bed, watching light slip between the curtains. I thought about what it meant to live in someone's house, not just physically, but emotionally. I had made myself smaller and smaller in Calvin and Molly's home, until I was no longer a person to them. Just part of the structure. Useful, familiar, quiet. And I realized, I had no interest in shrinking further. I called Gwen's office from the motel room. She picked up herself. Said she'd been expecting the call someday. He told me you might reach out, and that if you did, I was to drop everything else I was doing and give you whatever time you needed. That afternoon, I sat across from her in a warm office that smelled like lemon oil and books. She was in her 60s, sharp and deliberate, with a face that didn't move much when she spoke. Harold was a careful man, she said. This was structured well in advance. You're the sole account holder on everything. The assets are clear, the trusts are revocable. You can adjust anything. She went through it all with me. Each account, each property, each share. Nothing was in Calvin's name. Nothing was shared. The house I helped buy. That was never part of this. That was something I'd given to them. This was something Harold had given to me. We refiled everything. Retitled the properties under my name. Created a new trust. I asked if I could include Amelia, just her, as a future beneficiary. Gwen nodded. She's the only one I still feel responsible for, I said. Not Calvin. Not Molly. Not anymore. We added a clause to protect the funds until Amelia was older, with access tied to education or independent milestones. Gwen called it proactive generosity. I called it making sure the last person I loved wouldn't grow up expecting everything to come easy. When we were done, she handed me a thick envelope with copies of everything. She didn't ask me what I planned to do next. Maybe she already knew. Outside her office, the wind had picked up. Leaves scattered across the pavement. I stood for a long time next to the car, folder pressed to my chest, coat pulled tight. For the first time in years, no one was waiting for me. And for the first time in years, I wasn't afraid of that. I left just before sunrise. No confrontation. No letter. No explanations. I packed the suitcase I'd brought to Calvin and Molly's 3 years earlier. The same one that held my good blouses and the scarf Harold gave me on our 25th anniversary. I didn't take much. A few clothes. The folder from Gwen. The key Harold had hidden. Nothing else. The house was quiet when I slipped out the door. Amelia's backpack was on the hook in the hallway. Her shoes, still too small for her age, sat beside the bench. I paused for a moment, just looking at them. Then I left. I didn't cry. I thought I might, but it never came. Instead, I felt something closer to relief. Like setting down a heavy bag you've carried too far. Like realizing you've been holding your breath for years without noticing. The drive was long, but not difficult. I'd booked a small rental cottage in Arizona. Remote, simple, affordable. I chose the town because Harold once mentioned it after a business trip. The light out there, he said, makes you feel like your bones are still yours. I didn't know exactly what he meant at the time. I do now. I arrived just after dark. The cottage was plain, white walls, sparse furniture, an old stove that clicked before it lit, but it was mine. No one had opinions about what I did with my day. No one asked what I was making for dinner. No one needed reminding to rinse their plate. I slept on the pull-out couch for the first 2 nights, just until I could scrub the bedroom and replace the linens. I didn't want to sleep in someone else's idea of clean. By the 3rd morning, I'd made the bed with my own sheets, folded my clothes into the dresser, and poured my coffee without rushing. The quiet felt good. Not empty. Just full of space. I called Gwen and told her I was settled. "I'm ready," I said. She didn't ask for details. She just said, "Good." We opened a new account at a local bank. I had the investment accounts moved. We updated mailing addresses and contact information. Within a week, everything Harold had left me was fully mine, accessible, traceable, and secure. I sat with that knowledge for a while. I didn't rush into decisions. I didn't make any declarations. I didn't post anything. I wasn't interested in proving anything to anyone. But I did begin to think about the next chapter. There was a rundown cafe on the edge of town. Boarded-up windows, paint peeling from the front steps. It had been closed for years, but the bones were good. I walked past it almost every day on my way to the post office. One afternoon, I asked the clerk about it. She shrugged. Used to be called the roadside cup. Great pie back in the day. No one's had the stomach to bring it back. That night, I opened one of Harold's folders and began the process. 3 months later, I owned the building. It wasn't a grand purchase. Just a dusty piece of real estate that everyone else had written off. But to me, it was a place to begin again. I hired local contractors. Paid fairly. Showed up every morning with coffee and a notebook. The renovations took 5 months. We kept the bones, replaced the wiring, sanded the counters, painted the walls. When it was finished, I named it Red Rock Start. The name made people tilt their heads at first. But it fit. The red cliffs that circled our little town were old and solid. And for me, this wasn't a second chance. It was just a beginning. We opened quietly. No advertising. Just a clean space, a good cup of coffee, and a handwritten menu on the wall. I hired a high school senior who needed weekend hours and a woman my age who'd left her last job because her manager talked down to her. We worked in shifts. We learned each other's rhythms. I didn't need the money, but I needed the rhythm, the routine, the presence of people who didn't expect anything from me except kindness and clarity. Every customer got their drink with a napkin. The napkins weren't fancy. Just plain white, with a line printed in the corner. Sometimes, disappearing isn't escape, it's a return. Most people didn't comment. Some did. Is that from a poem? One woman asked, stirring her tea. No, I said. Just something I needed to hear once. One morning, I opened the cafe and found Amelia's drawing on the doorstep. It was folded in half. A simple sketch of a woman standing in front of mountains. No note. No return address. I knew that drawing. She'd made it for me on a napkin years ago, during a long wait at the DMV. I'd kept it in my wallet until it faded. Somehow, she remembered. I didn't cry then either. But I did sit down in the back room, just for a minute, and let myself feel it. She had found me. Not in the way Calvin would have tried to, through legal records or bank accounts. Not through control. Through memory. I framed the drawing and hung it in the cafe, just behind the register. No name. No story. Just something soft and true, like the scent of bread baking or the sound of water in a metal sink. I didn't tell anyone who drew it. Some things are better kept close. I didn't think about them much, not at first. In the early months after opening the cafe, my world became small again, in the best way. I liked waking up before the sun, unlocking the front door, turning the sign. I liked the smell of cinnamon in the mornings and fresh soap on clean counters. I liked hearing myself think without interruption. Customers trickled in. Most were regulars by the third week. Retired teachers. Young mothers. A few high schoolers with earbuds and tired eyes. They liked the quiet. They liked that I didn't hover. They liked the napkins. Sometimes, disappearing isn't escape, it's a return. Some of them wrote the line down. One woman asked if it came from a book. I told her no, not really. Just something I learned the hard way. I never told them where I came from. Not because I was hiding. Just because it didn't belong here. But the past always has a way of sniffing out peace. The first card arrived in April. No return address. Just, "We miss you," in Calvin's handwriting. A photo of Amelia was tucked inside. Her school picture. She looked older. Tired around the eyes. There was a note on the back in blocky handwriting, "I miss baking with you." I placed the photo on the windowsill behind the counter. I didn't write back. I didn't want to punish her. But I wasn't ready to open that door either. 3 weeks later, another envelope came, this one thick. Legal looking. Inside was a letter from a woman I hadn't seen in 20 years. Lorraine. Harold's sister. She wrote in stiff, clipped sentences. She said she was aware of recent property transfers, and believed she might still hold legal claim to a parcel of land that Harold had deeded to her decades ago. She said she preferred to settle things quietly. Her tone was formal, but her meaning wasn't. She wanted something. She had always wanted something. Back when Harold was still alive, Lorraine had hinted, subtly, then not so subtly, that we owed her for taking care of their father in his final years. She brought it up every Thanksgiving. Every Christmas. He never left me a dime, she once told me, as if I'd personally orchestrated the will. Harold had tried to be kind. He'd given her money more than once. Helped with her divorce. Paid for her car repairs. But there was always another need. Another reason. Another excuse. He finally cut contact after she forged his name on a document for a small property she'd wanted to sell without him. It had taken months to unwind that mess. Harold had never spoken to her again. Now she was back. And somehow, she'd heard about the properties. I met with Gwen the next morning. She read the letter and didn't flinch. "She's bluffing," Gwen said. "That deed was transferred back to Harold voluntarily in 2006. I've got the signed release and the notary record. She has no legal ground." "Then how does she know anything at all?" I asked. Gwen hesitated. "I don't know. But it's possible someone talked. She didn't have to say it. I knew who she meant. Calvin." That night, I checked the old email I hadn't used in months. One I'd kept for family, back when I still thought we operated like one. There were messages. Dozens. First from Molly. Then Calvin. Then both. Some short, some rambling. None of them said sorry. Not really. They said things like, "We just want to understand." Or, "Why didn't you talk to us before leaving?" Or, "Amelia's been asking." The most recent one was direct. Calvin wrote, "Lorraine came to us. She had paperwork. She said Dad left things hidden. We didn't know what to believe. I told her we'd help her find you if she promised to leave Amelia alone." So that was it. My son had traded my privacy for silence. It didn't surprise me. Not anymore. But it did sting, somewhere deep. Somewhere maternal. I printed the email. Not for proof. For clarity. Then I sent Gwen everything. The letter from Lorraine. The emails. The file Harold had left behind with the original property transfer. Within a week, Gwen had filed a civil injunction. Lorraine was contacted directly by Gwen's firm, warned of pending litigation, and given a formal cease and desist. She folded fast. Probably didn't expect I'd be prepared. She underestimated me. So did Calvin. He showed up 2 weeks later. He didn't call. Didn't email. Just pulled into the gravel lot one Tuesday morning, Amelia asleep in the passenger seat. Her knees tucked under her, one arm slung over a stuffed elephant I recognized from her toddler days. He stepped out of the car holding a folder. It was the kind Harold used to carry. Manila. Bent at the corners. I met him outside before he could reach the cafe door. "Hi, Mom," he said. Like nothing had happened. I didn't respond. "I just wanted to talk," he continued. "Just 5 minutes. That's all I'm asking." I nodded toward Amelia. "She doesn't know. She's been asking where you are. You brought her here for leverage." "No. I brought her here because she missed you." "I miss you." I looked at the folder. He followed my eyes. "I've been talking to Lorraine. I shouldn't have, but I did. I thought she could help me understand. She said things. I didn't know what was true. I still don't. I said nothing." He held out the folder. "I took some money. From her. In exchange for what I knew. I told her about the lawyer. The vault. I thought," he stopped. "I thought if I could just get ahead of it, maybe I could undo some of the damage." "So now you want to undo the undoing," I said. He looked tired. Older than he should have been at 38. "I just want to fix this." I pointed to the car. She's asleep. You need to take her home. He nodded. She loves you. I know. She didn't know anything about the money. Or the trust. She still doesn't, I said. And she won't. Not yet. Is that a punishment? No, I said. It's protection. He stepped back, uncertain. You're not in the trust, I added. You were, once. But not anymore. He opened his mouth. Closed it. Then looked away. She'll be okay, I said. She'll have what she needs. He didn't speak again. Just nodded, turned back to the car, and drove off. I watched until the taillights disappeared. Then I went back inside, tied my apron, and served the next customer with a steady hand. After Calvin's visit, there was a quiet shift in the air. He didn't come back. Didn't call again. The emails stopped too. Not just from him, but from Molly. Even Amelia's school picture disappeared from the mailbox. I didn't blame her. I imagined the drive home, Calvin explaining too little or too much. I imagined her confusion, maybe her silence. I hoped, in a quiet, steady way, that she'd understand someday. Not now. Not while she was still a child caught in adult decisions. But later. When the house she grew up in felt small. When she looked around and realized what kind of people had raised her, and what kind of person she might choose to become instead. A month passed. The cafe grew busier. We added muffins. Then sandwiches. People started bringing friends. Some customers stayed for hours, nursing a single cup of tea. I didn't mind. I liked the company, even the quiet kind. Then one Thursday afternoon, a manila envelope showed up in the mail. Inside was a typed letter on formal stationery. From a law firm in California. Representing Lorraine. She was pursuing a formal claim of entitlement to a portion of Harold's estate. They'd found an old will, likely from before Harold and I were married, one where Lorraine was listed as a secondary beneficiary to a Nevada parcel. They were requesting mediation, warning of escalation, and attaching financial estimates that made me laugh out loud. The parcel she wanted was now worth 5 times what it had been when Harold bought it. Likely thanks to the mining stocks tied to it. She knew that. That's what she was after. I handed everything to Gwen. She barely blinked. This is noise, she said. We'll file a motion for summary dismissal. It's bluff and bluster. She has no legal basis. And even if she did, statute of limitations would bury her. But she's not going away, I said. Gwen nodded. Not quietly, no. But she will. And she did. We filed the motion. Her team delayed, rescheduled, tried to push mediation. Gwen didn't budge. After 6 weeks of back and forth, Lorraine's lawyers sent a final letter. A weak threat disguised as concern. We hope you understand our client's position and her deep sense of betrayal. That was the word they used. Betrayal. As if Lorraine had been the one left in the dark. As if she hadn't spent years trying to extract what she hadn't earned. I told Gwen to file a civil counterclaim. We attached the forged documents from years ago. The property transfer Harold had fixed at personal cost. The letters Lorraine had written after their father's death, harassing, accusatory, loaded with entitlement. Gwen compiled everything. When it was ready, we sent a notice. Lorraine fell silent. A month later, her assets were frozen temporarily while the investigation unfolded. Her bluff had become a liability. We didn't hear from her again. I wasn't angry. Not the way I would have been 5 years ago. I didn't feel triumphant either. I felt something simpler. Still. The kind of stillness that comes from doing what's right, not out of vengeance, but because protection matters. Because silence doesn't always keep peace. Sometimes, silence invites more harm. Around that time, Gwen suggested I take a short break. "You've been under pressure for months," she said. "Even good pressure is still pressure." She was right. So I left the cafe in the hands of my staff and drove north for a few days. I stayed in a small town with clear lakes and old pine trees. I hiked. Sat by the water. Drank coffee without serving it. I didn't think about Lorraine. Or Calvin. Or what Amelia knew or didn't know. I thought about Harold. I thought about the man who planned for silence, who trusted me to interpret the signs, who left doors where I thought there were only walls. I came back rested, quieter inside. Life resumed. The cafe settled into its rhythm again. My team added seasonal specials. We rearranged the seating. The chalkboard menu changed weekly. I taught the new girl how to steep tea properly. She reminded me of Amelia, before things got complicated. One morning, just as I was opening, the bell above the door rang. It wasn't a customer. It was Molly. She looked thinner. Tired. Her coat was too expensive for the weather. Her shoes were the same kind she used to scoff at when she saw them in discount catalogs. I didn't say anything. She stood in the doorway for a long time before stepping fully inside. "I wasn't sure if I should come," she said. I nodded. "But Amelia asked me to," she added. "She wanted me to bring something." She handed me an envelope. Plain. No return address. Inside was a letter. In pencil. Careful cursive. "Dear Grandma. I hope you're okay. I miss baking with you. I miss your stories. I don't know why you left, but I hope you're happy. Mom said I should forget, but I can't. Love, Amelia." The letter wasn't long. But it landed hard. Molly was watching me read. Not trying to explain. Not apologizing either. "She doesn't know anything about all this," she said, gesturing vaguely. I nodded. "She just misses you. I miss her too." Silence. "She asks questions. Calvin doesn't know what to say. Neither do I." "I'm not sure I do either," I said. Molly looked around the cafe. "You built something here." "Yes. I thought you'd be lost without us." I looked at her evenly. "You were wrong." She didn't flinch. "I didn't come here to ask for anything," she said. "I just wanted to deliver the letter. That's all. Thank you." She started to leave. Then turned. "We weren't trying to hurt you. You didn't have to try. It happened anyway." She looked down. I added, "I'm not angry. Not anymore. But I see things clearly now. That's different." She nodded. "She might write again." "She can." Molly left. The door closed behind her with a soft chime. I stood for a moment, holding Amelia's letter. Then I placed it in the drawer beneath the register, next to the one she drew when she was 5. I didn't frame this one. It wasn't a message for the world. It was something I needed to keep private. That afternoon, a customer asked me where I was from. I paused. Then said, "Somewhere I outgrew." In the weeks after Molly's visit, I didn't hear from anyone else. No more legal letters. No more emails. No surprise appearances in the cafe parking lot. It was as if everything had finally settled into place, not because we made peace, but because they had exhausted every other option. Lorraine went silent, and I heard through Gwen's assistant that she had dropped her civil claim before it ever reached a courtroom. No apology, of course. Just quiet withdrawal. That was enough for me. Some things don't need to be punished. They just need to stop. I didn't celebrate. I didn't open a bottle of anything or call anyone to announce the news. I simply hung the new cafe hours on the front door and wiped down the chalkboard like it was any other Tuesday. I added a new line to the napkins, small, printed beneath the usual one. Still here. Still standing. A few regulars noticed. A few didn't. One man asked if it was from a poem. I smiled and said no. Just life, I said. The long version. The cafe became more than a project. More than an escape. It became something whole. We planted herbs in the back garden. Put in benches beneath the trees. Amelia's old drawing still hung behind the register, though only I knew what it meant. Sometimes, customers would stare at it while waiting for their coffee, like they were trying to place something familiar. I let them wonder. It wasn't a secret, just a story that didn't need to be told out loud. I thought of her often. Wondered how school was going. If she still kept that elephant. If she remembered how to fold a napkin into a swan like I'd shown her. I didn't expect letters anymore, but I kept a small stack of stationery in the drawer anyway, just in case. Gwen visited once, on her way to a real estate conference. She sat at the window, sipping tea, watching the traffic roll by. "You did well," she said, not as a compliment but as an observation. "So did you," I said. She told me Lorraine had formally closed all remaining accounts. That the last piece of unfinished business was done. "There's nothing hanging over your head anymore," she said. "I know. You want to revise the trust. Update anything?" "No," I said. "It's where it needs to be." She stayed for an hour, then drove off with a paper bag of scones for her assistant. I watched her car disappear, then returned inside and wiped down the counter. The sunlight hit the floor in long stripes. The front bell chimed twice. 2 teenagers came in, arguing softly over a playlist. Life kept moving. That fall, the town held a small harvest fair. Nothing fancy. A few food stalls. Music from a local group with an old guitar and a keyboard that needed tuning. I signed the cafe up for a booth. We brought iced cider and pumpkin bread. The high schoolers I'd hired helped pass out samples. People lingered. Talked. Asked questions. Someone suggested we start hosting music nights or workshops. I said I'd think about it. I wasn't in a hurry. Everything didn't need to grow to be meaningful. Some things could stay small and be sacred. Late October brought a letter. Handwritten. Carefully folded. Postmarked from another state. Inside, Amelia had written. "I asked Mom if I could visit. She said maybe. I told her I would behave. I don't know what I did wrong, but I still miss you. I'm learning how to bake. I made banana bread that didn't burn. It wasn't as good as yours, but it was still soft in the middle. Do you still have the story about the woman with the red shoes? I want to hear it again." She signed her name in cursive, then printed it again beneath, like she wasn't sure which version of herself I'd remember. I sat with the letter for a long time. I didn't rush to answer. I didn't plan anything right away. But I took a fresh sheet of paper and began writing. Just a few lines. "Dear Amelia. Thank you for your letter. I do still have the story. I remember all the stories. And I remember you. You didn't do anything wrong. Things just happened around you. But you're not a part of the problem. You're still part of my heart. And yes, I'd like to see you again. We'll take it slow. We'll start with banana bread." I mailed it the next day. Didn't tell Gwen. Didn't tell the staff. It wasn't a plan. It was a beginning. By December, I received a card. Inside was a plane ticket. Not for Amelia. For me. Round trip. One weekend. No expectations. Just time. Molly had signed the card, with a note that said, "If you're willing." I wasn't sure, at first. But I packed a bag anyway. The flight was quiet. The arrival simple. Molly picked me up herself. No explanations, no awkward speeches. Amelia was waiting at the house, older, taller, shy but steady. She hugged me without a word. We baked. Just banana bread. She cracked the eggs too hard. Forgot the salt. But it came out warm and soft in the middle. We ate it in the living room while the snow started falling outside. I didn't stay long. 2 nights. That was enough. Before I left, Amelia handed me another letter. Folded neatly. Inside was a drawing. This one of a woman with red shoes, standing in front of a mountain. The same mountain I saw every day outside the cafe. She'd drawn herself next to me. "I want to visit," she said. "Next time." I nodded. "We'll make that happen." I returned to Arizona with the drawing in my bag. Framed it the next morning. Hung it beside the first one. No label. No caption. But when people ask about them now, I say, "That's my granddaughter. She remembers where I live." The cafe kept running. The garden bloomed again in spring. One of the high schoolers got accepted into college. Another got married. I stayed open 6 days a week and closed early on Sundays. I never told customers my full story. They didn't need it. They read it anyway. In the quiet. In the way I poured their coffee. In the way I never rushed anyone out. In the napkins that said, "Sometimes, disappearing isn't escape, it's a return." And beneath it, "Still here. Still standing." Sometimes, people nod when they read that line. Sometimes, they smile. A few even tear up, like they've been carrying something too long. I don't explain it. I just hand them their cup, wipe the counter, and welcome the next person through the door.